Okay, so I'm wearing shades today and a camel hat in the hopes that maybe I can escape detection by the little drone that's probably flying around in the corner of this studio. You never know, folks. These creatures appear to be everywhere, and we're going to talk about that today with as soon as I can wrestle with the headset, which Maddie is going to help me with because I have no idea what I'm doing. Anyway, we're going to talk about the drone walk, the anti-drone walk happening right now across the state of Iowa. We're also going to talk about the National Security Agency's troubles. More specifically, Edward Snowden. This guy, where is this guy going to hide? I mean, where do you hide when you've committed that kind of a breach of national security? I mean, he's a hero to many people, but we're not the ones calling the shots. We'll talk about that today as well. We're also going to talk a little bit about Tyler Olson's apparent entry into the governor's race, and we will talk with advocates for the theory that chemtrails is happening and it is a corporate plot to alter our environment. I'm not quite sure where that conversation is going to go, but I always welcome interesting, provocative, strange in some cases theories, and we're going to have that later in the program. But first, I want to start off by switching out of these ridiculous glasses and this crazy cap because really, there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide. These drones are starting to be everywhere. And some question whether it's necessary for the terrorist threat that we face. Others say, hey, this is not something we need in this country. Few people are of the belief that what's happening overseas with drones makes any sense at all. And one of them is Brian Terrell. He joins me on the phone from somewhere in eastern Iowa as he and others make their way across the state to call attention to the use of drones in combat. Brian, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Good to hear your voice.
Where are you exactly?
We just left Muscatine a few miles behind us. We're about 35 miles into a 195-mile walk.
Wow.
From Rock Island, Illinois to Des Moines, Iowa.
It sounds like a great warm-up for the Great March for Climate Action next year. And I think at least one person on the march is planning to do that. How many are you? How many marchers strong?
Right now, I believe there's about 16 of us right at this moment.
16?
And it's getting bigger and smaller. We had quite a few friends from the Quad Cities walk with us, escorted us out of town, more or less.
And you're escorted you out of town? But now you're going the whole way?
I'm going as far as Iowa City.
Okay. But some people are making
then I will be back in Des Moines for the events in Des Moines.
Okay. And
but there are most of the people who are with us now are going to be going the whole way.
All right, great. So why is this important? What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, the reason why we're choosing Iowa and this walk to Des Moines at this particular time is that the Iowa Air National Guard wing out of the civilian airport there in Des Moines is very shortly going to be replacing their F-16 fleet with a drone operations center.
And that was an interesting political battle because every Iowa congressman, from Steve King to Bruce Braley, all five of them opposed that shift, but possibly for the wrong reasons.
Well, yeah, anytime this kind of robotic technology, it takes jobs. And that's what
it takes away jobs. You mean? Yeah.
Yes, because to maintain a fleet of F-16 planes takes a lot of people, a lot of skilled labor. The drones, on the other hand, the actual planes, these little drones are not going to be in Iowa at all. They're going to be taking off overseas in places like Afghanistan and Pakistan. And with the military taking over the CIA's role soon, people sitting in offices right at the airport in Des Moines maybe will be conducting in real-time military missions over any place in the world.
It's kind of an amazing technological development when you think about it. You can sit in an air-conditioned cubicle in Des Moines and bomb a village in Afghanistan.
Yes, and it's what it does. It's what we've been told, and many Americans so far have been accepting the narrative that these are modern high tech weapons that we can carry on these fights without our soldiers being in harm's way, and that with a precision, high-definition video feed, we can find out who the bad guys are and not hurt the innocent. And the evidence hasn't supported that at all. And what it does, too, I'm living in Iowa since 1979, and I've been at the base there protesting times that the Iowa Air National Guard have gone to support the invasion of Panama and support of the Contras in Honduras, and then more recently the no-fly zones over Iraq.
Right.
But what's going to happen with the drones is that Iowans are not going to be periodically in combat once a year or every few years someplace far away. They're going to be engaged in combat pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with these drones being flown in all these other places.
Well, and there will be less Iowans engaged in combat, less soldiers, less American soldiers, and they will be much more insulated from the negative impacts of war. Now, some might argue, well, that's a good thing. They'll come home with less incidents of post-traumatic stress disorder, less incidents of having their legs and arms blown off, less casualties overall. Some would argue that's a good thing. But, I mean, I think there are other concerns about the way it desensitizes the folks who are pushing those, controls in that, air-conditioned cubicle, but also how it, further desensitizes the general public to what's going on.
Oh, yeah, you bring up several points there. One is about post-traumatic stress, and that's, proven to be false. One thing that technology has done.
Brian, just the quick question: the volume on your phone. If you could try to do a little bit more to keep that out of the wind. There's a bit of feedback there.
Holding my hand over.
Okay.
I'll do the best.
All right.
I can.
I know you've got to keep marching, so that's all right.
Yeah. So, is there's an intimacy to this warfare that few soldiers in modern warfare have experienced. Just last Thursday, a man named Brandon Bryant, a young man who's a former drone operator from Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, testifying about the horrible things that he's seen and that will haunt him, watching people die and saying, I can see every pixel and I can see the agony on people's faces. So
he can actually, he doesn't just see the drone itself, he sees the damage that it's doing, the people being killed. And
and he may be following somebody for days before the order comes to shoot, and sees the person interacting with his kids and sees him going to work and everything. And then whereas the F-16 fighter planes move very, very fast, and I've heard fighter pilots say they never see the plume of their smoke, plume of smoke from their bombs. They are seeing in high-definition video in real time the impact of their bombs and seeing body parts fly. One drone operator said that when he's flying the drone, he's 7,000 miles away from the war. The distance between the office where he sits on a military base in the United States and Afghanistan, and he's also 18 inches away from the war. His face, this is his face in the screen. So it's this is exacting a tremendous toll from the people, mainly very, very young people who are involved in operating these drones.
Folks, if you'd like to call in and join the conversation during this segment of the program, we're talking with Brian Terrell, one of 16 people currently marching from the Quad Cities, from Rock Island Arsenal specifically, to the Air Guard base here in Des Moines, to call attention to the inhumanity, shall we say, of the use of drones in combat. The number to call here is 244-0077, or toll free it's 855-244-0077. And you can always email me at fallonforum at gmail.com. So what kind of interaction are you having with people along the way, and are you getting any kind of favorable response to the message?
Well, it's been remarkably favorable and almost universally so. So we've had several veterans of several wars,
Really?
Including a man when we were walking into our campsite the night before last at Buffalo, Iowa. The man gets out of his car and is handing out water bottles to all of us.
Wow.
And told us he had served 2 terms in Iraq, and that and that he said that it's not only the drones, but that none of our weapons are as precise as we're told, and that we're killing people that we don't even know who they are or why we're killing them. We stopped and talked to a very emotional discussion with a Vietnam veteran who told us that he'd come to realize that he was not fighting for anybody's liberty, but fighting for corporations, and he was really very happy to see us.
Good.
So, and the media too along the way.
I was gonna ask about the media. Yeah.
Very, very positive. And one thing I found is looking at the newspapers from the Quad Cities and here in Muscatine, that some of the journalists have actually done research themselves and put in things from the drones that information I didn't even know. Like the Quad City Argus put they had found an interview with General Stanley McChrystal from January, where he said, he's the former commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan.
Right.
And General McChrystal says that most Americans don't realize how this is perceived around the world.
Right.
That how it looks to people in other places, that this is American arrogance taken to its furthest extreme.
And in countries,
we will kill anyone, anywhere, anytime, just because we can.
And in countries that are totally unconnected to either the U.S. geographically or to Afghanistan, my understanding is public opinion is pretty solidly against the use of drones. What does public opinion look like here in this country? Have there been any polls? Well,
there have been polls, but I think, and I was asked about that the other day, that just this last week there was a poll that came out that said 60% of the American people support these drones.
That's troubling.
And I'm not seeing that here, and I also think that even if that poll is only a week old, there is so much that has surfaced for anybody who's following the news. This NSA wire leak and the another document that surfaced that the CIA doesn't know, even the identity of more than a quarter of the people that we've killed, even though,
wow.
Well,
it likes to claim. I know they always claim that they're enemy combatants, but I believe hasn't the definition of combatant changed to include any male over the age of 18?
14.
14. Any male over the age of 14 is officially classified as a combatant if you happen to live in an area where combat is possible.
Unless you are posthumously proven not to be a combatant.
Oh, that's some comfort, huh? Yeah.
And also with I don't value the lives of American citizens over others, but the cavalier attitude being taken, several American citizens have been killed overseas, and our Attorney General says that that they have not been, and again, not in battlefield. These are not people engaged in battle. These are assassinations.
Right.
In countries where we are not at war and where we do not have permission from the countries, from the sovereign countries we're operating in.
Right.
Said that Amr al-Awlaki, a U.S. citizen born in Denver,
right,
who was killed a couple of years ago, that his constitutional right to due process was honored and the qualifications were met because the president determined that he was a danger secretly and with secret information that due to security reasons can't be seen by a court. And, it's a tremendous, the hubris of that is just tremendous, because what it means is if the president decides that, whether this president or later president decides that somebody is a danger to American security, he can order their execution without any recourse, without having without any checks and balance.
Well, one more question, Brian. I presume you've been paying attention to the news stories about Edward Snowden and his whistleblowing on the American government spying on all of us, our phone records, Verizon's phone records being, Verizon being required to release the phone records of all of us, of the internet records. Do you see a connection to the use of drones on that issue? And I will say, maybe you saw the cartoon. It was in the Des Moines Register. It might have been in the Quad City Times, maybe the Muscatine paper as well. It showed two security types coming to someone's door and saying, we'd like to see your phone records, please, and we'd like a DNA sample. And he tells them to buzz off. And then as he's walking out his door saying, how can this happen in a country? What are we, some kind of police state? And the next frame, he's being blown up by a drone. So the cartoon artist in this case made the connection between the NSA scandal and drones. Do you see something similar, or is that going a bit too far?
Oh no, I don't think at all. I think there are different aspects of the same thing. One very funny thing that happened, I thought this is making strange bedfellows, as they say. In the hearings, the Senate hearings for John Brennan's confirmation as director of CIA, Rand Paul had a filibuster, Senator Rand Paul, and
Rand Paul is our best ally in Congress on this issue.
He wanted the administration to pledge that it wouldn't use drones in the United States to kill American citizens, and they stonewalled for days. The Department of Justice, the Attorney General, refused to say that they couldn't do that, and the compromise they finally reached is Eric Holder said, well, legally we have the right to do it. We reserve the right, but we will pledge that we won't. So that's where we are in that. It's so this is not something that we can keep overseas, and it's not something that I keep hearing people say we fight the war there, so we don't have to fight it here, and it's keeping this out of our borders is not going to be possible. Yeah. Well,
I again, Brian, I know it's got to be hot out there on the highway.
Yeah. Well, we just got off to a roadside oasis here, a little park, and so I'm in the shade right now.
How many miles a day are you all walking?
The last 2 days we walked 15 miles each, and we're walking, I believe, 11 today.
Okay.
So yeah, between I think at least 11 and up to 17 or so each day.
Well, if you should want to, you'll be in great shape for the climate march next year.
Okay, keep me informed.
All right. Hey, one more thing. I'd love to get information about this on my website calendar. I don't have any information about that. So if somebody could send some information especially about the final rally in Des Moines, I'll get that posted right away and we'll get the word out.
Okay, we'll work on that. And you can find things on the Voices Creative Nonviolence website.
Okay.
That's vcnv.org.
vcnv.org. All right. Brian Terrell, folks.
Voices Creative Nonviolence, and we'll get you some things by email too.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. Good luck.
Okay. Thank you, Ed.
Stay cool out there. Folks, I want to take a second to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club and Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility. Also, the Great March for Climate Action, 3 organizations that believe in the content of this program and support alternatives to right-wing radio. Thank you for being sponsors of the Fallon Forum. I also want to thank Gateway Marketing Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. Again, reminder, Gateway is open Monday through Sunday. That means every day at 20th and Woodland for great food and great groceries and great meals as well. Check them out, folks. I also want to thank Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering. I want to thank Diana's Wedding Cakes and Dan Kelly's Real Estate Service. I also want to thank Hawk Restaurant in the East Village and Tinker Heating and Cooling. Folks, support the businesses that help make this possible. You listen to Rush Limbaugh, and you're going to hear these big corporations that have deep pockets. The folks who support the Fallon Forum and who believe in this kind of alternative are small, locally owned businesses doing good things in our community, owned by people who you would like. Maybe you already know them, but if you don't know them, if you did, you would like them, I guarantee you. All right, so please support them. Tell them thank you for supporting this program. When we come back, we're going to share a video clip, a couple clips from a video by Lee Camp on the NSA issue. And we're going to talk about Edward Snowden's chances for living a normal life ever. And when we get done with that, we're gonna have a conversation about chemtrails. We'll be back in a few minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day one of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, how special is that? I get to start the whole program all over again. Maddie, you silly producer. Anyway, I love Brother Trucker, and I love Downtown Andy Fleming's tune there. And so I have no problem with playing it twice. It's great stuff. I want to thank Tinker Heating and Cooling for sponsoring this segment of our show. Leonard Tinker's been a longtime supporter of this program and calls in and graces us with his wisdom, as it is, once in a while. The guy's been fixing furnaces and AC units for over 30 years, though. Please give him a shout if you've got an AC issue. This is a guy who is, again, a longtime supporter of the show. And if you like what we're doing on this program, you got to support the businesses that make it possible. So give Tinker a shout at 371-2114. And again, I'd like to thank him for sponsoring this segment of our show. I also want to thank the Fighting Burrito at 13th and Locust in Des Moines and on Welsh Ave in Ames, and the Story County Veterinary Clinic on Highway 30 between Ames and Nevada, and Ritual Cafe, one of my favorite places at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. All right, real quick, Tyler Olson looks to be entering the race for governor. Again, people are going to criticize him for becoming the chair of the Democratic Party not too long ago and then suddenly dropping out to run for governor. But in all fairness, he didn't see the retirement of Senator Harkin coming. I don't know if anybody did. It happened actually on the same day that he was elected chair of the party. So how awkward is that? Anyway, no problem with that. He's making the right call, getting out now before you start using that position to advance your campaign, which would be inappropriate. He's making the right call. We'll see if he's the right candidate for the job. It should be an interesting primary. I wish the Des Moines Register and the media would start recognizing the fact that there are 3 Democrats running. And one of them has run a statewide campaign before. That's Bob Kraus. The Register has no trouble mentioning the 3 unknown candidates running for the Republican nomination in the U.S. Senate race. But for some reason, they can't mention Bob Kraus. Well, we're going to say Bob Kraus, Bob Kraus, Bob Kraus over and over again, not because I'm supporting him, but because of the issue of fairness. Again, there's no reason they can't pay attention to this guy. Some of this is personal because I saw this happen to me when I ran for governor too. So anyway, let's pay attention to that race. It could get probably a lot more interesting before it really evens out and we know who the actual field is going to be. All right, so again, later in the program, we're going to talk about chemtrails. I got to admit, I'm not necessarily bought into the notion that there's anything to this. I'm always willing to have a conversation about it. It looks to me one of those conspiracy theories that I don't see as being really well founded. But again, happy to have people on to talk about it. I got folks who do listen to this program who thought we should have that conversation. I said, sure, let's do it. But first, the big story of the week, possibly the big story of the year. I mean, come on, really. Edward Snowden, one brave dude. I mean, this guy had, by some estimates, a $200,000 a year salary. Was living in a nice apartment with his girlfriend. And he's now in hiding in Hong Kong. His main fear, he says, is not for his own safety and well-being, but that the U.S. government would come after his family, his friends, and his partner. I mean, I love my country, all right? But I think at some point you have to say, okay, my country, I love you. My government, okay, yeah, what you're doing is important in some areas, but maybe we're going in the wrong direction in other areas. And certainly we've been going the wrong direction in foreign policy for a long, long time, since World War II at least. You could argue that we went the wrong direction in the settlement of this country and how we treated the Native Americans as well. But it is pretty clear to me that we are going in the wrong direction when it comes to our government's willingness to spy on its citizens. I mean, now to the point of collecting millions of telephone records from Americans all across the country, spying on us via our internet conversations. I mean, I don't understand why folks feel that that is really helpful in terms of protecting our country. And I guess I understand the arguments, but gosh, how far are you willing to go? Now, this guy, we'll see what pans out. But, I was wondering, okay, what exactly is going to happen to this guy? Okay, he's hiding in Hong Kong. How do you hide from the U.S. government? I mean, come on. Maybe you're safer hiding in a big crowded city than you are in, for example, a cave in Afghanistan. But I don't know. This guy's prospects are well, I mean, of course, there's the book and there's the movie, and he makes some money that way. Maybe he makes a heck of a lot of money that way. But who knows where he's going to go? He's got to find himself in an unextraditable, is that even a word? A country where he cannot be extradited. and I don't know whether that's possible these days with the power of the U.S. military, with the power of our government to spy on everyone, everywhere. I mean, this worries me. It worries me a lot. And I look at the, maybe you remember the movie Brazil. Maybe some of you never saw the movie Brazil. I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's about a futuristic country. This is maybe, 20 years ago. It was the Monty Python crew put this together. You think Monty Python, you think laugh, ha ha, funny stuff. This is a serious movie. It is probably, I can say, it is absolutely the most frightening movie I ever saw. Even though it has some really funny moments, it's overall very unnerving, and it stuck with me even after about 20 years because of my concern at the time, 20 plus years ago, was this is an accurate depiction of where we may go. And one of the key features of this film was that the government spent 75% of its budget on fighting terrorism. Well, you know what? We're up to 56% in this country. It was under 50% a while ago. We're up to 56% since 9/11. I see that as probably going to continue to grow. And maybe we'll find ways of spending less money because, again, as Brian Terrell pointed out, you don't spend as much money when you have drones replacing F-16s. But I mean, the level of intrusiveness continues to grow. And that was a feature in the movie Brazil as well, the extent to which government was spying on people. It was right. It was unnerving. And the extent to which government was using torture to get information from people to punish people, to scare the population. And it was I reflect on that movie. I reflected on it back then, thinking, we could go there. I hope we don't. I don't see it coming. Well, gosh, we really are. I mean, I'm sure. If our phone records and internet conversations are being monitored, certainly this program is. I would be very insulted if it wasn't. So, where do we go? I mean, this guy to me took an incredible chance. He sacrificed so much. The question is he a hero? Is he a traitor? Is he some kind of a villain? Does he just want to turn our country over to the attacks of terrorists? No, I'm going to go with the hero moniker. I mean, I think this guy did a lot to help further the cause of freedom. I mean, when we can't even have a phone conversation without the government intercepting it, when we can't even send an internet message, when cyberspace becomes something that is monitored and monitored by our government, where the information coming through there is used against us, that's problematic. I mean, we're not there yet to the point where you should be very frightened about what you say, but if we continue to go in this direction, we will get there. And that is of grave concern. And again, I think this guy is a hero for taking a blow for the people on this issue. Okay, so what's going to happen? U.S. surveillance programs have few options to stay ahead of authorities. Okay, now let me reread that. Sorry, I said that backwards. Edward Snowden, this is in an AP story today. Edward Snowden has few options to stay ahead of authorities while in apparent hiding. Again, the deck stacked against the guy. He could end up caught. He could end up like Bradley Manning. Okay, so when the Justice Department finally charges him, as they most certainly will, it likely will ask the International Criminal Police Organization, or Interpol, for a provisional request to arrest him pending extradition to the U.S. Okay, so in that case, it would be up to Hong Kong's leader to decide on handing over Snowden. So even if the chief executive of Hong Kong allows the extradition, the fugitive can request a judicial review, and those decisions could be appealed up through 3 court levels under current practice. But my concern is the powers that be in this country will find a way to subvert that practice. I would not be surprised if we stoop so low as to send in, we meaning the government, stoop so low as to send in some kind of a kidnapping squad to yank this guy out of Hong Kong or wherever he ends up, in total violation of international law. I mean, we're already violating international law on so many levels. It just, even some of President Obama's biggest supporters, I mean, I think of Rekha Basu in her column the other day, she is profoundly disappointed in the president. And I am as well. And also, again, the sense that we were lied to about this. This is not what we expected. This is not what we were told to expect from our president. Okay, so again, one option for Snowden would be to claim that he is the object of political persecution and then to fight the issue in the courts to avoid extradition. I would suspect that if that's an option, I mean, this guy's going to have some great lawyers. There's no doubt about that. And he's going to need them. Okay. He could also argue that he would be subject to cruel and humiliating treatment in the U.S. No doubt there. Absolutely no doubt there. Hong Kong changed its regulation. This is interesting. I don't know. This is either amazingly fortuitous timing for Snowden or a weird coincidence, or maybe it was, who knows? I don't know what to make of this, but just 6 months ago, Hong Kong changed the regulation. It requires that a court consider cruel and humiliating treatment and not simply torture when considering extradition requests. So again, maybe the U.S. would argue, well, send him back to us. We won't torture him. And that argument could win in court. But if now he would merely be subject to, quote, cruel and humiliating treatment, boy, it's hard to argue that any time in the slammer is anything but cruel and humiliating. Having spent one night there myself, I can pretty much assure you that's the case. All right, well, we're going to keep covering this situation, folks. We've got a lot more to talk about here. I have invited people to call into the program, 244-0077, 244-0077. And since none of you has, except Frank from Des Moines, we're going to welcome Frank from Des Moines to the show and perhaps
Well,
Perhaps.
congratulations, Ed. You've joined the club of the profoundly disappointed.
Okay, I've always been somewhat disappointed, but it depends on the issue.
Okay. Well, first off, this Snowden guy is not a hero. I mean, there's a way to come forward and blow the whistle without telling all our secrets to our enemies. I mean, I want privacy as much as the next guy, you know, but there's got to be some delicate balance between protecting our homeland and getting the bad guys and protecting the rights of the innocent, law-abiding citizen not to be spied on. I don't know what that delicate balance is, but coming out and pulling your pants down and telling all the secrets of the U.S. ain't the answer.
No, man, these aren't all the secrets. This is something that Americans want to know this stuff. I mean, don't you want to know that this is going on? Don't you want to know your phone records, internet records are being monitored by the government? Come on, what kind of libertarian are you?
You're a historian guy. What was Hoover doing in the 50s and 60s?
Bad stuff, and it should never be done again.
So our citizenry has been spied on for years and years and years and years.
But it's becoming more intrusive because of the power of the internet.
Well, sure, and anybody, was you around when they come out with the three-wheelers with the balloon tires? I mean, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure that you was going to get hurt on those machines, and it don't take a rocket science to figure out that with the internet and putting yourself out on Facebook.
Well, but you shouldn't have to. Well, you should always watch what you say.
Well, have you ever
but
heard
you
of
shouldn't
what
have to be so guarded that you're afraid your government might come after you if you say something inappropriate.
Have you ever heard of what they call buyer beware?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you put yourself out on Facebook, buyer beware. But buyer beware when you send an email. Buyer beware.
But no. When you send a message to mom, you presume that is a conversation between you and mom, not some bureaucrat working for Homeland Security in Washington, D.C.
Well, sure.
That person was not invited into that conversation. They shouldn't be sitting in your living room. I can't sit in my living room in the living room with my mom, so I send her a message by email. I don't expect somebody with HS being there.
Here's one point you're missing. George Bush made no bones about it. We need to spy on our enemies because we need to thwart their ability to carry out their plots against the U.S. He identified what he called the enemy. He said, this is the enemy, this is who we're fighting. Barack Obama turns around and says, well, Al-Qaeda's dead, their teeth have been pulled, but yet the spying increases under Obama. It doesn't decrease.
Frank, I agree with you, and I'm upset about it. Here's the funny thing about this segment, Frank, and I got to go, is I am more in agreement with Rand Paul than you are on this one.
No, well, listen, I'm probably in agreement with Rand Paul, but what I'm saying is there has to be some delicate balance. I'm not sure what the balance is. I don't know that I'm smart enough
I can assure you you're not, Frank.
Or privy to all privy to all the information they have.
All right.
But there has to be some delicate balance.
I agree there's a balance. But there's no doubt in my mind we've gone overboard. Frank, I got to run. But let's tell you what, let me put you on hold while we share this clip from Lee Camp, who, as always, has a hilarious take on a very important issue.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. The Bradley Manning trial is now underway because he let the world know that the U.S. is clearly guilty of war crimes. And at the same time, Edward Snowden has revealed that the National Security Agency is nearing completion of a full surveillance state in which none of our electronic communications are safe. You take these two cases together, and you see that something very grave is going on. A dark cloud is building over America. And that dark cloud can only be stopped by the strength of the American people standing up together. That dark cloud is, of course, whistleblowing. Something. Manning and perhaps Snowden will not only be tried in court, they will be tried every day in public opinion. We should all talk about the courage it took for Manning to stand up, talk about the bravery it took for Edward Snowden to throw away a $200,000 a year job, a house in Hawaii, and perhaps his freedom in order to reveal the illegal U.S. surveillance state.
And that's the key. This stuff is actually illegal. I want to thank Tinker Heating and Cooling again for sponsoring this segment of the show. And Frank, you need to go get your air conditioning unit checked. Give Tinker a shout. Come on. I also want to thank S&P Piano. They haul pianos here, there, everywhere. Give them a shout. information on my website about them and also about Sergeant's Garage, one of my other business allies. And don't forget Dan Kelly's real estate business in Newton. If you've got a home to sell or buy, Dan's your guy. I'll be back in a few minutes. We're going to talk with Dave Wingington about chemtrails. I don't know where that conversation is going to go, but it'll be an interesting one. We'll talk in just a few minutes when we come back from a break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And that's Max Wellman, by the way. Max Wellman bringing us back to our conversation on the Fallon Forum. Quick look ahead tomorrow. We're going to talk with Ron Yarnell. I can't remember what we're talking about. Ron, let me know what we're talking about tomorrow. And we're also going to talk tomorrow with State Representative Dan Kelly about the legislation that's still under consideration because the governor has yet to make a decision on what to do with the appropriation for the food banks of Iowa. We hope he does the right thing. We're also going to talk with Betsy Standow about the upcoming Contra Dance on Saturday, why that's interesting and important. And also we're going to talk a little bit about her hypnotherapy business and why, what's up with that. Hypnosis is a topic of interest, and Betsy knows a bit about it. Friday, we have an interesting show for you. We're going to... it's kind of a postmortem on the demise of Mid-American Energy's nuclear power plant. I got to tell you, I'm pretty darn happy that that nuclear power plant is no longer under consideration. Joining me will be Dr. John Racco with Physicians for Social Responsibility. We'll also hear from Wally Taylor, a lawyer who represents the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, and Iowa attorney Jim LaRue joining us for that conversation as well. We're going to have a focus tomorrow on that nuclear power plant. But right now, we're switching to a different topic. Dane Wigington is joining us for the conversation here about chemtrails. Dane, where are you calling us from?
I'm in Northern California, at Shasta County.
All right. Well, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for addressing this issue. I'd like to point out to the listeners that semantics is very important in this equation. Actually, if they Google chemtrails, they'll find conspiracy theory and hoax. If they Google geoengineering, they'll find hard science data. Our site is geoengineeringwatch.org. No politics, only science data, and that's what got me onto this issue. It was just I have a background in solar energy, former Bechtel Power employee. My home was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine when I began to lose 40, 50, 60% of my solar uptake from whatever these aircraft were leaving, these grid patterns, and I started to do research and testing the rainwater. I was pretty shocked at what I found.
Okay, so again, contrails are what that refers to the track left by an airplane as it jets across the sky.
Well, but we're not referring to condensation trails here. We're
I'm just making that distinction.
These are particulate trails, and according to NOAA's own data, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the conditions necessary for a naturally occurring vapor trail. Their original data, which they've since modified, as they do whenever they want to obscure the truth, as they've done with radiation data and so forth. But their original data stated 70 below 70% humidity. You almost never have that over the lower 48 other than the midwinter months. And even then should be the smallest, almost transparent trail. So, what we're seeing is particulate trails. Even NOAA now acknowledges the sky is, recent studies acknowledge it's full of particulates. They can't imagine where it's all coming from. And California Air Resources Board had studied the particulates from China because many people want to leave that.
So these trails are being left by airplanes. Is that the theory?
According to all available data, these are payload disbursements, and indeed.
But do we see airplanes doing this? I mean, I see the lines across the sky, but I don't recall seeing airplanes. I just assume they're clouds.
Well, I tell you what, we have actual video footage. If people go to our site, geoengineeringwatch.org, we have video footage up close and personal behind KC-10s, KC-135s.
What's a KC-10? What's a KC-10?
It's a military tanker.
An airplane tanker?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And how come we don't see these?
We do see them. We do. We have video footage of these spraying at altitude. The nozzle's visible, turning on and off. There's really no plausible denial at this point. I mean, we have actual video footage of the spraying. And I again, on the state of the climate, I certainly have studied that issue for a very long time. And I mean, our climate's in real trouble.
But let me back up. I'm trying to assess a motive. Why would the government? I mean, again, I just got done talking about the government spying on Americans, taking our phone records.
Correct.
Spying on us, taking our internet records, and I'm in praise of Edward Snowden. I don't like the fact that our government is doing that, but that's pretty emphatically. I mean, they admit it. But in this case, it's a bit more bizarre. What would the motive be for spraying chemicals in the atmosphere?
I can give you some known motives. We have military documents called Owning the Weather, where the weather modification is stated as a, quote, force multiplier for the military.
Why would they want to modify the weather?
I think the strategic purposes for that should be very clear to most people.
Okay, it's not to me.
If you control the weather, you can win a war without ever firing a shot. I mean, that people should look this up. I don't want them to believe what I say. We have military documents. They state themselves their strategic goal of owning the weather. And we have, for example, from 1966, we have an 80-page document from NASA. We found in the NASA archives, I should say, outlining the full U.S. weather modification program.
Again, I'm trying. Why would they want to control the weather?
I'm telling you that military strategic purposes.
What are those?
Well, let's take Pakistan, who started to show resistance to U.S. policy and then found themselves underwater, 20% of their country underwater. I mean, if you can shut the rain off...
20% of their country underwater, you mean from floods?
Yes. And you have presidents of countries in the UN, for example, Ahmadinejad twice already stating on the floor of the UN that he believes his country is being droughted out by geoengineering.
So you're saying is the U.S. government the only one that you feel is participating in this geoengineering?
Yeah, nothing here is about what I feel. It's about what the data supports.
Okay, but the data that you're presenting says the U.S. government is doing this, not other governments?
Oh, no. I never said that.
Okay.
All the NATO countries appear to be involved on one side of the equation, Russia and China on the other, and also.
Wait, what do you say? Russia and China on the other?
They're geoengineering as well. The Chinese openly admitted they are. People can look this up.
Are they all cooperating to do the same? Do they have the same goals in mind for modifying the weather, or we have conflicts going on here?
Oh, I don't think so. I think we have some serious conflicts going on. I think they're playing tug of war with the weather. Now, this is more important too. The stated purpose on many geoengineering patents is to fill the atmosphere with particulates to slow or mitigate runaway climate change. This is the stated purpose, even though we have NASA stating on the record that...
Well, it seems to be failing miserably.
Exactly. I would totally agree.
So what are they going to do, abandon the program?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to double down. That's what we see happening already. We have 22% global dimming right now, Ed. I mean, you probably know that. So we have 22% of the sun being blocked from an atmosphere that's filled with particulates. We know the particulates are there. We have them in the rain tests. We have them in the air samples. There's no question it's falling on us. It's not coming from China as far as normal industrial pollution. It's the same particulates described in geoengineering patents. We have films of the aircraft spraying at altitude.
Right.
Geoengineering is a part of the equation that academia is refusing to acknowledge.
Dane, can you hang on I've got to go to a quick break, but could you hang on and join us
Absolutely.
For the final segment here?
Absolutely.
All right. I will be back in just a few minutes, folks. I want to thank the $1 Million Marathon. That's a project of Above and Beyond Cancer. They're organizing this run across the country, 160 marathons, one after the other, a relay of marathons to raise money for cancer research. Again, I also want to thank Max Wellman for his music. Sid's Catering for providing some great fare for events that I've organized. Again, Sid's Catering, if you've got a catering event, give her a shout. Remind you, too, about the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit coming up in November. Great opportunity for small business entrepreneurs to get a jump start on what they want to do. Also, thanks to Community CPA and Associates, a tax and accounting firm that believes in this alternative. Fighting Burrito as well, folks, and Gateway Market, two of my other business supporters that I encourage you to support because they believe in the alternative to commercial radio and the limited conversations you're going to find on your AM and sometimes FM dial. We'll be back in a minute. We're talking with Dane Wigington about chemtrails. Again, I got to admit I'm skeptical, but I'm willing to have the conversation. And folks, if you'd like to join the conversation, it's 244-0077, 244-0077.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Thank you, Mary McAdams, for bringing us back to our conversation. Again, this show is all about local music, local business supporters, oftentimes local guests, but we talk about national issues as well as local stuff. Today we've been talking about the NSA scandal and the fate of Edward Snowden. We've also been talking about the march across Iowa to bring attention to the issue of drones killing Americans and others overseas. And we're talking about the chemtrail issue. And again, I confess I am a skeptic. I'm not buying it, but I'm willing to have the conversation. And welcome Dane Wigington back to the program. We do have a caller, Dane, but before we go to that caller, let me again give you a little more time to explain to the skeptics of the world like myself why we should be believing that this is intentional and designed to disrupt our climate.
If I could complete this one statement,
sure.
Again, I was a skeptic as well, and I did not want to find the massive amounts of aluminum in my rain. I did not want to find all the rest of the data I found. But quite simply, the data is overwhelming now that there is really no plausible denial. We have actual footage of these aircraft spraying at altitude. People can view that on our site, geoengineeringwatch.org. We have 150 patents. We have.
What do you mean by patents? 150
patents for geoengineering assigned to Hughes Aircraft, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and again, and semantics are very important. Geoengineering, not chemtrails. Chemtrails is a non-scientific term, leads nowhere.
But how long has this been going on?
Based on available data and government documents since the late 40s. Now,
the late 40s?
Late 40s.
So
this is historical fact.
That's what, 70 years?
This is not speculation. This is historical fact. We have budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars for these programs, even in the 60s, as documented by government documents people can see on our site.
And the goal is to change the weather, to control the weather.
You have so much weather modification going on that in 1968, Project Popeye over Vietnam was so successful in modifying the weather that in 1976, the UN passed a a resolution forbidding weather manipulation in wartime. This is an actual historical fact. But now the climate's been so decimated by these programs that the geoengineering is an attempt to try to...
Wait, so you're trying to blame climate change on geoengineering and not carbon and methane? And
I'm saying it's a complex equation. I absolutely know that anthropogenic damage to the planet is...
What does that mean?
All human activity has, of course, done damage to the planet. But there is no greater single disruptive force in the climate right now than global geoengineering based on all available data.
So that's worse than all the coal-fired power plants. That's worse than all the automobiles. Worse than all the other carbon emitters, all the other methane emitters.
I believe overall, if one examines these programs, they'll come to the same conclusion if they examine the data, because we have not just saturating of the atmosphere with 20 million tons of geoengineering particulates. That's a stated goal of geoengineers. We also have ionosphere heaters like the HARP facilities that appear to be manipulating the jet stream. So yes, I believe data supports that the single most disruptive factor in the climate, and this does not negate human activity, coal plants. I'm not negating that. That's a huge problem as well.
Okay, but 97% of scientists disagree with you on this.
No, they don't. You find me any statement that's where they even acknowledge geoengineering. They don't. They're not even putting that in the equation. They're simply ignoring the elephant in the room when they say the atmosphere is full of particulates, as Noah said, but, gee, we don't know where they're coming from. They can't identify it, and we know we have films of aircraft spraying these particulates. We have metal tests on the ground that show these particulates falling to the ground. We have 22% global dimming. I think there's a very big elephant in the room here, Ed, that people simply refuse to acknowledge because it's not very comfortable.
Well, let me go to a call, and we'll try to squeeze Catherine in before we've got to wrap up the program. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Yes.
Hi, where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Solon, Iowa.
Solon.
Thank you for Solon, outside Iowa City.
Yes, sure.
Thank you very much for doing this show, because I see chemtrails above my head about 5 out of 7 days, and I've noticed them all over the state. If you go onto YouTube and you just type in chemtrail, and I know that's not the correct word, in Iowa, you'll find that people are putting photographs of chemtrails above our heads in Iowa on, and there's lots of people who are really upset about this. I was really shocked when I first learned about this, and then I started reading the government documents. I read the 1996 Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025 by the Air Force, and I realized that they were thinking of using the weather as a tool, and of course in Vietnam I think it was used. If you can rain on conventional troops, you can really impact their ability. And I also saw a report done about how when you spray this aerosol spray, the Air Force can fly under it without being detected by radar. So there may have been some earnestly, in their mind, good uses for this, although I would question whether spraying all of us with aerosols, if that's really, really worth it, because there's definite health risks in doing that.
Well, you know,
also,
go ahead. Sorry, Catherine. Go ahead.
Also, I saw the movie Why in the World Are They Spraying? And one of the things they pointed out was that people can trade on the Commodities Future Trading Commission with weather derivatives. And if you are on the inside, if you know, for example, if you knew last year that there was going to be a drought, you could have made millions of dollars by the way you traded. Well, I look at this as possibly going to be like the next credit default swap issue.
I've got to wrap up the show, Catherine. I'm sorry we're out of time. But you know, I'd make this offer to you, to Dane, to anyone else listening who has strong feelings about this. I would like to stage a debate on the show about it. Again, I'm not qualified. I'm not a scientist. I could just look at research and say that seems to make sense or that seems to make sense. I'd be happy to have that conversation if we can identify somebody in the scientific community who has a different opinion to kind of, you know, challenge some of the things you say and maybe to lay out some other
I would welcome
positions.
that debate. I would welcome that debate. I've already debated a government atmospheric scientist, meteorologist, and who conceded by the end of the program. I would drop what I'm doing to be at such a debate anytime, and I will meet that with hard, credible data. And I just encourage people to investigate this issue. I didn't want to believe it either, but the data's there. We have films of these planes spraying. We have lab tests, so forth. I just want people to investigate.
Well, Dane, if you can send my producer Maddie contact information for that person or anyone else who might make a noble sparring partner in a debate on this issue, I'd be happy to host that sometime.
This person has already conceded, so I think we've lost that one.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess so.
So anyway, but I'll drop what I'm doing anytime.
All right.
To be on such a show.
All right. Well, thank you again. Interesting conversation, folks. We've been talking with Dane Wigington about the chemtrail question. Again, some are definitely convinced it's happening. Others are more skeptical. Some are just saying it's total crackpot stuff. I think it's an interesting conversation, so I'm willing to continue to dialogue about it. Although we have so many things to dialogue. Next week, in fact, we're starting a new segment on the show focused on education. We're going to talk more about that as we get closer to next Tuesday, which is when we'll have that segment. I want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit. Speaking of education, if you want to learn how to start your business or how to deal with changes in healthcare law because of the Affordable Care Act or new tax code changes, this event is for you. It's going to be coming up on November 9th at Drake University. That's the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit, or online, IES.org. Again, I want to encourage you to support the businesses that support this program, like Leonard Tinker, Heating and Cooling. Also, Hawk Restaurant. Hawk Restaurant is sensational. 90% of their food comes from Iowa farms, Iowa producers. They're at East 5th and Walnut. And if you're in Story County, part of my Ames audience, Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30. Give Dr. Kim Holding a shout. She's been doing this for a long time. Also, again, thanks to Community CPA and Associates, to Ritual Cafe, and to Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering in Beaverdale. And again, Maddie Arrington, you're doing a heck of a job. Thank you for your work on this program. Thanks to Webcast One Live. Thanks to all my guests today. We'll be back tomorrow.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.